everyone! For maths, for the next little while, we are going to be learning how to measure in different ways. And this week we're going to start with measuring weight. That means how heavy something is. So we're going to need to use words like heavy and light, heavier, lighter, heaviest, and lightest. We measure things for lots of different reasons. It might be that you need to measure ingredients when you are cooking. I'm using scales here to measure the weight of my pasta. You might need to measure the weight of yourself to make sure that you are a healthy weight. I'm using digital scales this time. And when you go on holiday, they won't let you take your suitcase on the plane if it's too heavy. So you have to measure the weight of your suitcase. I'm using digital scales again, but this time to see how heavy my suitcase is. When we are measuring today, we're not going to be using scales. You might do that with an adult at home if you're cooking or baking, and they can explain to you what kind of scales you have and how you use them, and that's fantastic. But for this activity today that we're going to do together, you don't need scales. The way that we are going to weigh things together is simply by picking them up and having a think about how heavy they are. Is the thing you're holding heavier than something else or lighter than something else? So we won't need any scales today. All you need is some objects and your hands. We're going to do a scavenger hunt today. That means that we need to find maybe about 8 objects that are different weights. So some heavy, some light, some that are somewhere in between. I am lucky enough that I have a garden and it's such a beautiful day that I'm going to go and do this outside. But it also works fine in the house as well. So I'm going to go and see what I can find. So here are my 8 things, well 9 if you include Lottie who's also come to play. These are my 8 things that I found around the garden. When I was picking these things out, I obviously had to pick them up. And it was picking them up that helped me to decide which ones were very heavy and which ones were light. So what I'm going to do now is with these 8 things, I've got a peg, a leaf, a stone, a brick, the top of a hose, a big heavy bag of compost and a heavy strawberry plant and a little empty plant pot. What I'm going to do with these now is I'm going to have a think about which one was the lightest when I picked it up and which one was the heaviest. This little leaf was the lightest and I can't remember which was heavier. Hello Lottie. The bag of compost or the strawberry plant. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and pick them up again one at a time very carefully and decide which one, the compost or the strawberry plant, was heavier. The compost was definitely heavier. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my lightest thing here and I'm going to put my heaviest thing over here. So there's my lightest thing there and my heaviest thing there. Now I'm going to look at all of the other things I've got and I'm going to try and put them in order from lightest to heaviest. So here we are. I've got them all lined up from what I think was lightest to heaviest. So we started off with the leaf here. That was very light. That was very easy to decide. That was definitely the lightest. And then the next one was the plastic peg. And after that was the plant pot. Some of these I had to pick up a couple of times to compare them to feel which one was lighter and heavier. So if you get a little bit stuck with any, just pick them up one by one and see if you can compare them to see which one's lighter and which one's heavier. And then the next one, so this one here was heavier than that one. That was the hose, but this one was lighter than the little rock. I did have to pick these ones up a couple of times to try to decide. That one was a bit tricky. You'll notice that the plant pot looks bigger than the rock, but just because something is bigger doesn't mean it's going to be heavier. So to try not to get tricked by that. Then next it was the big brick, and just like these two, the brick and the strawberry plant, I had to pick those up a couple of times to try to make my decision about which one was heavier and lighter. And then at the end was the bag of compost. So this one was the heaviest and the leaf was the lightest. Another useful thing for you to do is, if you're with someone else, you can ask each other questions. Things like, if it was my object, someone could ask me what things were heavier than the brick. And of course my strawberry plant and my compost were heavier than the brick. Or you could say what things were lighter than the brick. And the things that were lighter than my brick were the stone, the top of the hose, the little empty flower pot, the plastic peg and the leaf. So I hope you have some fun in the house or out in the garden finding some objects and talking about which ones are heavy, which ones are light, and see if you can put them in order from lightest to heaviest or from heaviest to lightest. Have fun!